PSTA Sunrunner received the 2023 One Bay Macintosh Award. The board approved a 2-year contract with Catalyst Communication Group for strategic communications counseling. They also approved the purchase of 3 new Sunrunner buses with Sunrunner project savings. And they approved the new station closer to downtown. Oh, I'm sorry. That was it last month. Sorry. They also approved free fares for veterans. And that will start on November the 10th. And that's that. So we're going to go over to Duncan.
He's not on. He's not on.
He's not here?
No. He's on his honeymoon.
Gloria, you...
Duncan is on his honeymoon.
Oh, that's right.
That's
Gloria, are you able to
I have nothing.
do a...
No, I have nothing to report because I did not go to the CAC. I'm off the CAC now. That's just Duncan. So sorry, nothing to report. Hopefully next month, or he'll be able to report more.
Okay, and just to check, just to make sure, there's nobody else on our board besides Duncan that's on the Forward Pinellas, right?
Right.
Okay,
Not
thank
yet.
you. All right. With that, well, moving right along, we're on to number 5, the action items. I think first for rules of order, do the people at PSTA have to vote to allow us online to participate and vote?
I believe that's been the practice with our board. So I guess to be consistent, it would probably make sense to do the same thing here.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay,
So we need a motion.
We need a motion to approve the 3 months, was it?
Yes, March, April,
Well, I think you
May.
would have to make a motion first to approve the people online to vote, and then everybody both here and online can take the vote.
I'll make a motion.
Right.
I'll make a motion to have the people online be allowed to vote for this. Second.
okay, so we have a motion from Gloria. Is there a second from someone within the room?
Elizabeth seconded.
Second.
All right, and all opposed, only in the room. I can't see your picture of this little.
Yeah, nobody in the room is opposed.
Okay, thank you. So the motion passes. With that, we'll now go and approve 3 months of TRAC meeting minutes. That would be, let's see, March, April, May. Do we have a motion from anyone who would like to approve these minutes?
Did we have those online? Were those distributed to us online?
Yes, they were. Yes, it should be available online, yes.
I so move. All right, so we have a motion from Jay. Do we have a second from anyone?
I'll second it.
That was Kim.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kim. All opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands in the little picture, so we're good.
I think she had a question.
All right, so the motion
Mark.
carries and the minutes are approved as they were presented.
Just hold on. Mark, there was
Mark,
a
she had a
With
question.
that, we're
question.
moving on. I'm sorry?
She had a question. The question is, can you get the minutes online?
Oh, yeah, they said yes, it
Yes.
is.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, it
yep,
is.
they are posted to the
Yes,
agenda
yeah.
on the website.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and with that, we're now moving on to number 6, our information item. We do have 2 today. First, we're going to hear the bus plan presentation from Jarrett Walker and Associates.
Great. I will, thank you to Chair. I will go ahead and start us off to introduce our guest speaker for the day. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. So let me make sure this clicker is going. Oh, nope.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry, is it not?
Go ahead.
Okay. There we go, I did it. All right, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Jacob Labutka, Planning Manager here at PSTA, and I'm also the agency lead for our Community Bus Plan, which is an effort that we recently started undertaking. So this is a giant effort that we do about planning effort we do about every 5 years to take a good look at our bus services and figure out through extensive data analysis, such as through the onboard survey that's being conducted right now, and through extensive in-reach and community outreach and an analyzing of lots of other data points, how we can reconfigure bus services and improve bus services in the short term and over the next 5 to 10 years through there's a lot of different factors, through a lot of different outreach, and working with the consulting team to help guide and facilitate those conversations around our bus system. So the lead on this project that we put on RFP and selected a vendor for is the firm Jarrett Walker and Associates, who will be our prime transit planning lead to help us through this process. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to their project manager, Scudder Wag, who's going to walk you through some of the elements that we'll be looking at through this bus plan and some things to kind of think about as we go through this process, and also hear some initial comments from this group as we begin our planning effort, and particularly as we begin the first phase of outreach in the next few months. And with Scudder, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Thanks so much, Jacob. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. And Jacob, you will be
Yep, I will
managing
be
the
the slide
slides,
master.
or someone is there to do next slide? Great. So with me as well from Jarrett Walker and Associates is our Deputy Project Manager, Ricky Anguera, who's on the screen. We are, again, with Jarrett Walker and Associates, I'll talk about it in a minute, the firm that does this kind of work all over the country. But what is this community bus plan? It is a plan to develop what kinds of changes, improvements, growth, et cetera, could happen in the next 10 years in primarily the fixed route and fixed route supporting services like mobility on demand, things like your directing that program. To do so, as Jacob mentioned, we're going to be going through a lot of data, looking at the current market for services. Where are people? Where are jobs? Where are people in need? Based on a variety of different demographic factors. And we're collecting data right now on the Origin and Destination Survey, which is an important survey that meets a lot of requirements, including Federal Transit Administration requirements for capturing information about Title VI populations, captures information about where people are traveling on the existing network. But beyond that, we want to have a wider public conversation because that OD survey tells us a lot about how people are using PSTA today, but it doesn't tell us about what people who aren't riding today might want. It also doesn't tell us what kinds of trips people might want to make that they can't. And that's an important thing to think about throughout this process. So we will have a two-phase engagement process, and in key parts asking some key trade-off questions, which I'll get to in a second, about how would you want to invest, what different priorities would you want to invest in. And that will guide us to develop some recommendations for network improvements, route improvements, and prioritize things that could be done under multiple funding scenarios, including short-term, which appears to be fairly constrained, but also longer-term, what could you do with potentially significant more investment in transit? Next slide. So that's what we're trying to achieve. A little bit more about how we intend to do that. We want this project to be a conversation with the public, with staff at PSTA, and with you all as representatives of riders, with riders themselves. So this diagram on the right gives you a kind of outline of how we're going to go through this. We're analyzing the current system today. We're doing this OD survey. We're capturing a lot of information about needs, demand for service, and so on. And when we complete that, we will produce what we call a choices report, which will lay out all of that information in hopefully a very clear way and ask some questions about what should the priorities be for the future. And so this fall, we will have a general public engagement process where we have some public meetings, we have some surveying of riders, of the general public, about what should our priorities be for improving transit in Pinellas County and the region. And based on that input, and that first blue box represents that first round of engagement, we'll then develop some scenarios. So what could a significantly improved network look like with more funding? What could a short-term network look like with prioritizing different priorities that we hear about from the public? And that will form the draft plan that we come back to the public and say, hey, this is what you said to us about your priorities. Here's what that leads us to. Did we get this right? And that will be the form of the second round of public engagement, likely in early 2024, which is that blue box. And then based on that, we'll refine the plan and publish a final plan by no later than the middle of next year. Next slide. So just really quickly, a little more about who we are, Jared Walker & Associates. So Ricky and I are based out of Arlington, Virginia. We lead the East Coast practice for Jared Walker & Associates. We're a small transit planning firm that's worked with communities across the country on exactly this kind of plan. What are your possibilities? What can you do? And we will be leading the overall system analysis, network design, and planning process. We're supported by some partners. WBA Research is a partner who's leading the onboard survey effort. Some of you may have seen the surveyors on the bus if you ride regularly, and that surveying effort's wrapping up in the next week. And then EXP is another firm that has a number of local staff who are experts in public engagement, getting out there, meeting riders where they are, leading public meetings, and they'll be supporting a lot of that work of reaching out to the community as we go through. Next slide. At Jared Walker & Associates, we've led a number of very successful network plans across the country. Some of them very short-term focused on what can you do if you rearrange your entire system in the short term. So Houston, Texas, for example, we led through a big planning process in 2015, and they completely changed their entire network in 6 months. And it led to a significant improvement in ridership relative to their peers. We did a similar process in San Jose, California, and in Richmond, Virginia. We led a planning process in Miami, Florida that called the Better Bus Network Project, and that's going to lead to a significant network change for their service in November of this year. In their case, it's going to actually be with an additional about 15% more transit service based on new investment from the county. Next slide. One of the things I want to introduce you all to is a way we want to talk about one of the valuable things transit can do, and that is what we like to call access and freedom by transit. So imagine this is a person. Let's call her Jane. Next slide. She lives in a city with all kinds of possible destinations, jobs, shopping, medical services, houses of worship, things she might want to do in her life, represented by all these little icons. Next slide. This gray area, this little blob, is where she can get to in 45 minutes by transit if you count all of the things involved. The waiting time, the walking time, the transferring, and riding on the bus. You can think about this almost as the wall around her life. Because if it takes you more than 45 minutes or an hour to get there, it's going to be hard to do those things every day. Next slide. And within that bubble, we can count up all of the jobs, we can count up all of the grocery stores, we can count up all of the schools, we can count up all sorts of things that she can reach. And that is a quantification almost of her physical freedom, of what she can do. We can do this very quickly with counting all the jobs she can reach. And that's a useful quantification. So, next slide. An example of this is we did this in our Miami project. And so Jane lives, in this case, in Liberty City. Next slide. This is where she could get to in 30 minutes on the network as it existed, or as it exists today, basically. Again, counting the walking time, the waiting time, the riding time, the transfer time, all of that time. Next slide. This is where she could get to in a revised network of services, changing the frequency of service, changing where routes run, and she could get a lot farther. Next slide. And so that lighter blue area is all the new area that she could reach in 30 minutes in that new revised network in that new plan. That was 96,000 more jobs that she could reach, which is 60% more than she could reach today. So in a way, we could say she's 60% more free. And jobs is a quick and easy way we can calculate and quantify what's in that area, what's in that access. Well, we can also count all sorts of other things. And jobs are a useful representation of shopping potential. Retail jobs tell you a lot about how many jobs you could, or how many shopping centers you could reach, and so on. Oh, I see we have a hand up. Do we have a question?
No, it was somebody that I sent the invite to. I guess they must.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so are we okay to proceed, or do you want to take care of that real quick?
Yeah. somebody raised their hand.
Oh,
Next slide.
oh wait, do we? Oh, sorry, are we allowing somebody virtually to ask a question real quick?
They just joined in the Zoom.
Oh, okay, that's why they raised their hand. Okay, I think we're good to go,
Gotcha.
Ms. Scudder.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So next slide. We can summarize that access
Sorry.
from lots of different places. So this was just one example of one place. Next slide.
There we go, sorry.
We can do this kind of analysis over and over and over again. And in Miami, we could say that that the average person could reach 26% more jobs in 30 minutes. And we can also say that that 65% of residents would see a substantial increase in job access. So, next slide. This is one way of looking at the value of what transit can do. And it tends to be a really useful way of thinking about what transit can achieve, because transit systems that maximize access are transit services that are likely to be useful for all kinds of particular trips that anyone might want to make. So it's an expression in a way of the freedom transit can provide. And maximizing access tends to align with lots of other things that people want. Maximizing access to economic opportunities and workforce and jobs and schools. Maximum access is also the thing that tends to align with investments in more walkable communities. And then just it aligns really closely with personal freedom.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, we have a quick question in the room.
Yeah.
Yes, Gloria.
My question is,
Yeah.
do we overlay any of this relative to car access? Because I think when you talk about the freedoms of transit, which I love and I'm a transit believer, but people are always comparing, if I had a car, I could do more. And I'm wondering if we ever compare and say there's a point at which transit actually becomes, the fact that there are fewer cars on the road because more people are riding transit actually can translate to more freedom as well. I mean, I know that complicates everything, but I'm wondering, how does car figure into all that?
So from research, we know that if travel time by transit between places is no more than about 50% longer than driving, it can be reasonably competitive with people who have the option to drive. So that's one way we can look at this on a comparative basis. It becomes a lot more important to look at that in places where car access and congestion is extremely challenging of a problem. So like I live in the DC area, and car access to downtown DC is obviously extremely expensive between parking and congestion. In your region, you don't have quite the same level of congestion or quite the same level of parking costs that really big metro areas do. So it's not quite as critical to compare that directly, but it is a way we can look at that, take it to a next level.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I just got a couple more slides and then we can have a further discussion because I do have some interesting questions for you. But one of the things I want to emphasize is one of the things that this kind of way of thinking about transit value raises an important question is, if we want to maximize access, and in particular maximize access with a constrained budget, so if you have no more budget to spend on transit. On the left is an example of a network that's maximizing access to opportunity because it's putting really frequent service near most people. So this is a little fictional town on the left, and you've got all these roads you could run buses on, and all those dots are people and jobs. And on the left side, we've taken 18 buses, and we've put them all on two main routes that are close to about 70% of the people and jobs. And because we're running 9 buses on each route, it means there's a bus coming every 10 minutes. And it serves 70% of people in that town. And it serves them with really frequent service, so they have really short waits and it's really easy to transfer and connect. And so it's really useful and it maximizes access for most people, but not everyone. So, Mrs. Smith in the southeast corner of that town might say, this isn't fair to me. This isn't giving me something that I deserve because I'm paying taxes too. And she'd be right. She's not getting something in that network. So on the right side is it spending the same 18 buses in a very different way. It's spending those 18 buses to send routes to almost every street in that town. But with only 18 buses still to spend, that means each route only has 1 or 2 buses running on it. And so buses are only coming every 40 or 60 minutes. And so you have a long wait. And with longer waits means it takes a lot longer to get somewhere. And so you are reaching everyone, but you're reaching everyone with less frequent service that's less useful for most people. And this is the geometric challenge that arises from how transit interacts with where people are and how people are connecting, and the importance of frequency. So this is a trade-off we'll talk about from time to time as we're thinking about what your priorities might want to be. And so that leads to, next slide, some trade-off questions that we'll likely, talk about. The maximum access thing is the thing you do if you're thinking like a business. If you're thinking like we want to maximize the competition we have with cars in the places that we can be most useful. And it's the thing that gets the most people using transit, so it's the thing that does the most to reduce vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. So it's the greenest thing to do with your resources. But that maximum coverage thing is the thing you do when you're focused on thinking about transit like a public service that is a utility that everyone deserves access to. And it's the thing that provides service to every municipality, every electoral district, and provides lifeline access to as many people as possible. So this is a challenging trade-off, and it's a trade-off we'll probably ask a bit about as we go through. Next slide. So one of the ways we talk about this is, would you rather have a longer walk or a shorter walk but a longer wait, which is the example on the left side here, or would you rather have a longer walk with a shorter wait? So those are two different examples of fictional routes running through two different neighborhoods, 2 60-minute routes with a shorter walk, or 1 30-minute route, possibly with a longer walk. Next slide. So, this is something that kind of comes up in some of the areas around the southern part of St. Pete, where you have a number of routes fairly close together. And so it's a question for the community here. Do you want a shorter walk but a longer wait? Or would you be willing to have a longer walk if you had fewer but more frequent routes running through some of the neighborhoods? It's a value question about what people prefer, and that's something we'll likely be asking about. Next. So, as I mentioned, we're analyzing existing conditions now. We will come to the public with some of these kinds of trade-off questions in September to October. Then we will develop ideas and concepts that will come back to the public in probably March to April of next year, and then finalize the plan in the late spring of next year. Next. In that existing conditions analysis I mentioned, we're doing this origin destination survey. We're mapping and analyzing the existing network, so that's a sample of the system map that we're drawing there on the right that shows existing routes by the frequency of service, because frequency is so critical to the usefulness. We're analyzing the density of people and jobs, because density is a huge driver of demand. Next. And so a couple of things that we're noticing as we're starting to go through this analysis. One, there's the challenge of the geographic scale of your county relative to the funding and the amount of service, which means you end up having relatively low frequency across a lot of routes, a lot of 30-minute or 60-minute services, which means long waits for a lot of people in many parts of the county. Next slide. There are some other things that we're seeing. You have a number of transit centers across the county, but the connections between routes are not always timed well, which means it can be very hard and challenging to connect to go long distances. And then on the right here, one of the things we've noticed, this is a drawing from a web tool we're building that shows some of the routes that come into downtown St. Pete, like Route 7 and Route 16 and Route 38, and they come close to each other, but they don't actually touch, which means it's hard to transfer in downtown St. Pete between some routes. And this is a challenge. You really want to try to, when routes get close to each other, we really want to have them touch each other in a way that is easy to transfer between routes, and that's not happening right now. Next. And there's also some uneven spacing of stops. So for example, on the Route 4, in this example, you've got 3 stops that are only 700 feet apart, whereas to the north of this area, north of 30th Avenue North, you have stops that are spaced a little more evenly. Ideal stop spacing in community like yours is probably on average every quarter mile, and here it's every 300 to 400 feet, which is pretty close together, which means the bus is moving slower because it's having to stop a lot. This is also somewhat related to the question of how long would you walk versus do you want to get where you're going faster. Next. And then there's a couple places like Gateway Mall, Tyrone Square Mall, where routes have to go very out of their way. The southbound 4, in this case, has to loop back on itself because of the location of the bus bays and shelters on 77th Avenue North, which when Ricky and I were there last week and we rode around, I timed it and it took an extra 6 minutes because of that looping around yourself on Route 4 in the southbound direction. So that's kind of awkward. So next. So we are about halfway through our work of looking at the existing system and gathering data. These are just some things we've noticed as we've started to do that. And we wanted to come to you all tonight or this afternoon and see what are other issues or concerns do you think we should be looking at in more detail? And do you have any initial opinions about these value questions that we've initially introduced this afternoon? So with that, I'd be happy to take some questions and have a little discussion.
May I?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse. All right, is there anybody who would like to ask any questions about the presentation, anything that they want to mention?
Oh, Mark Glory was just about to ask a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, again, when you talk about comparing, and I know he did talk about other markets where they've worked. I keep feeling like I think we've heard that PSTA is fairly efficient for considering that we don't have good funding. I mean, does any of this involve comparing again to markets that have done a better job or better job of satisfying customers in some way relative to the monies that are invested? Because we were just having a conversation about, there are people even on our county commissioners who think that we're spending too much and we think we're not spending enough. So I guess comparing it to other markets.
Sure. So one of the things that we have just started to dive into and that we are going to do is a little bit of what we call a peer analysis, which is comparing you to other agencies in other communities. So, for example, we're thinking of comparing to links in Orlando and Broward County, maybe Palm Beach County, maybe Jacksonville, and then maybe one or two others in other parts of the country. And we would be comparing on a couple of different factors, one of them being overall ridership level, but even more important than overall ridership level is a number we call productivity, which you probably have heard before on TRAC, but many of the public haven't heard, but that is boardings divided by the total revenue hours of service, and a revenue hour of service being 1 hour of a bus running on the street. And that is one measure of efficiency that gives you a sense of how much ridership are you getting relative to the service you're putting on the street. And so that analysis will give us, at least on that factor, one sense of how efficient you are relative to what you're spending. So we haven't gotten far enough into, say, at this point, how you compare, but that is something we're planning to do as part of this existing conditions analysis.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Let me click back over.
Oh, we have another question in the room.
I do, Mark.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just totally fascinated by this subject and how you all have an expertise in figuring these things out. And there's no doubt in my mind that you could fix a lot of our actual problems. That would be what takes so much time to get around our county. And I would imagine we have a difficult county to deal with because we're surrounded by water and we don't have very much overlap with those around us. So the people on the fringes probably have a much more difficult time. But it seems to me that the biggest problem that we have is who's in charge and who gets to make those decisions. Because obviously in the past, if we have bus stops a few hundred feet apart in other places, I know hundreds of people who have to walk 0.6 of a mile to get to the first bus stop. So what I see is you have the brain power with the computer and the experience that you have, but the real thing that we need is somebody to do, I don't want to call it the dirty work, the difficult work, let's call it the difficult work. The difficult work is, if there's 10 people, 2 of them are loudmouth complainers, and they get most of the attention, and the other 8 will sit there at the bus stop and swelter in the heat and walk 0.6 of a mile. They don't have the political clout, or I don't know how everything actually happens, but obviously for us to have such an uneven system, our biggest problem is getting the job done to improve what we have, because we're probably not going to get a lot more money to spend. It would cost so much, So, is your expertise getting the job done because you're outside of our area, and it was that terrible firm in Virginia that said we need to stop stopping every 600 feet, Is that what your real value is? I know you have the brain power, and if it were me, I would just go, what we have to do is help the most people that are in need. That's important, but that would be that community thing. If you're talking business, well, we're doing a lot of things crazy, but I don't know if we have the muscle, the fortitude to stand what the badgering we would take to make it a successful business concept. You know what I mean? So is your value getting the dirty, well, I don't want to say the dirty work, but the difficult work done, or are you like the intermediary to help us through? Because if you just ask the people in this room, we would get nowhere, I don't think. Because we all have our motives, our concerns.
So I think the thing that we can help with as outsiders is to bring some outside perspective about what's best practice. But more important than that, I think one of the things that is unique about the way we approach the challenges of many communities is that we want to fuse our expertise with your local knowledge and values about your community. And so oftentimes you will hear us explaining a challenge and then asking you, which direction do you think is better based on your priorities and goals? And we will tend to want to get a response from the public and from key community leaders about things like this walking waiting trade-off that I mentioned. And then take that as here's what the community has said, okay, PSTA board, how far should we go in making change in that direction? This is what your community has said. This is the outcome in terms of access that you would get in improvements with going in, say, a less waiting direction. But ultimately, we believe that it is our job to help explain outcomes, but not tell you ought to do something specific. So that is what we try to do so that you all can make clear and confident decisions about what to do. And we have found in a number of communities that taking that approach can break through log jams of poor past decision making.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, great.
All right, thank you, Mark, and let's go to Jay.
Jay, I don't think we're hearing you.
You're not muted.
Not seeing Jay either.
No, I'm not hearing you. Do you want to type your question in if we can't hear you?
Jay had a comment that said Route 17 and 16 are flipped. Oh, I think that was referring to the map, yeah.
That was referring to slide 21, and I just noticed that, and so we'll fix that in the slides. My apologies for that.
I guess we probably go to, I think Gloria has a question here in the room.
I have another question, if that's okay.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about, one of the things we had talked about as a committee is the whole attitude toward transit within the community. And, it's like a chicken and egg thing. If you have a really good transit system, does it improve the image of transit within the community? The people who are willing to make sure there's more money available for transit? Do you have any experience with different markets by making their systems more effective? Does it improve everyone's attitudes toward transit and potentially bring in more users? I know that's like a two-part thing.
I'd say in our experience, when communities make improvements in transit that make transit more useful to a wide range of people, it can help to build a political coalition interest in expanding transit further. So I think you may have seen this to some degree with the implementation of Sunrunner. Sunrunner is a particularly useful service because it's so frequent and much faster for making trips on that corridor. And from what I've seen and from what Jacob has told me, that has expanded the range of people who see transit as useful and valuable in your community. And that's a similar situation that we saw, for example, in Richmond, which doesn't have exceptionally high transit ridership, in part because its network wasn't really that useful before we worked with them on a redesign, and they implemented that along with a similar BRT project there. And that the improvements that they've seen in usefulness has expanded the coalition of people who find transit useful and are, willing to make the argument that the community should be investing more in transit.
Thank you.
Dave, did you get your microphone fixed?
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yay! So my question was, have y'all been made abreast of the histories of the various routes and transfer stations or lack thereof? For instance, you were mentioning the lack of good connections in downtown St. Pete. Like, have y'all been made aware of the history as to why they're this and stuff like that?
Yes, yeah, Ricky and I were just there last week for a couple days and spent some time riding around and talking with PSTA staff and even some riders. And yes, we did have a good discussion about the history of the Williams Park, I believe, situation in the past, where routes used to converge. And so we are aware of that history. But I certainly welcome any follow-up conversation now or one-on-one from any of you all about any other history that we should be aware of, to help make sure that we're coming at this with a clear understanding of where people feel and what people feel about the existing system.
Okay, thank you. And another question from Max. Max, you need to unmute.
Sorry, my microphone was acting up. Yes. Not so much a question, but more of a comment regarding the 30-minute map. I can tell you, it takes an average of an hour for me to get to and from work. So, if something could be done about that. One of the more obvious ones I could see is increasing service on the Route 20 bus.
So is the time it takes you to get to work is the long period of time a function of the relatively long distance and slow time on the vehicle or slow travel, or is it waiting time, or is it transferring time or walking time? For you, what is the big thing that's driving that time?
It's distance and relying on routes that only come once an hour. So my options are to walk 5 blocks and catch the 20, walk 6 blocks and catch the 23, or cross the street and catch the 24, then the 22, but the 22 runs once an hour. The 23 runs once an hour, and the 20 runs once an hour.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, do we have any more questions from anybody online or at PSTA?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment, okay? Since I came from New York City, where everybody takes the bus and the subway systems to a county in Pinellas County where everybody drives. And we have been fighting for years and years with North County because whenever it came to raising money to do anything as far as the transit system was concerned, they voted against it. And I'm here 20, 30 years. It's been like that forever. And whenever we talk about increasing service through PSTA, the answer comes back, we don't have the money. I think there's a funding problem. My understanding, and I'm not an expert on this, is that whenever we go for grants in this area with the federal government, and I could be wrong, but this is what I had heard, okay? It's split up between Hillsborough, Pinellas County, Sarasota, Lakeland. So there's the amount of money that is received in grants doesn't come into one pot. It's split up between 5 or 6 different areas. I guess I'm making a comment instead of a question.
I can't speak to the grant element. Jacob or others on staff might be able to speak to the grant element. I think I would just note from our experience working in a lot of communities, there can be a big divide between more urban communities and more suburban communities that are operating in the same, or that are under the same umbrella in terms of transit service. And so I would just, one example of a situation where a community just took its own reins is in Seattle. They had a big referendum back in 2008 or maybe 2010 for the whole county to fund more transit service, and it failed. And when you looked at the map of who voted yes and who voted no, the more urban communities all voted yes, and the more suburban communities all heavily voted no. And so the city of Seattle decided to go its own way and fund more transit service itself. And so that's one avenue you all may want to explore through this process or through other processes of can the communities that really feel like they need more transit service find ways to fund it themselves if you can't agree on a county-wide situation.
Okay, is that another question in the room?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I was just wondering, first of all, really appreciate the visualizations you put together with the maps. I thought that was very helpful. I was just curious, thinking about this as a broader discussion of a plan for the future. You mentioned, like with the work you did in Miami and other areas previously, was just kind of wondering if light rail has ever been kind of incorporated into your previous studies. I think we're a long way from that. There's nothing going to be happening tomorrow.
We got
with that
beat
here
up with that one.
In Pinellas, but just from a long-term
Mhm.
perspective, if that's kind of incorporated into your planning.
So in Miami, we weren't focused much about the rail network. They have actually already have a long-term plan about rail expansion, and we were focused on the short-term potential bus changes. In Wake County, Raleigh, we did have a conversation about 30-year investment plan, and did they want to invest in rail? Did they want to do BRT corridors, and what kind of bus service improvements did they want to do? And we led a conversation about the differences you could achieve in rail versus bus rapid transit versus other investments. And based on that conversation, they leaned in the direction of bus rapid transit, given the more bang for their buck that they could get in the context of their community. But that's the context of their community and their values. And that's not the same decision that every community is going to make.
Okay. I thought Maxwell had his hand up again. I'm not sure if he had another question or not.
More of a comment. I gotta tell you, it feels to me like North County should probably, St. Petersburg really shouldn't have to worry about North County's problems. Clearwater has their own issues. Seems like we talk about Clearwater a lot, and I really don't see why St. Pete has to suffer for Clearwater's bad decision making. Just my opinion.
Okay. All right, I don't see any other hands, on the Zoom or in the room. So, thank you
Oh, Chair,
to
we
our
have,
presenters, you've been wonderful.
Oh, Mark, we have one more
And,
question in the room, sorry.
One more.
Your follow-up report.
We have one more question.
Thank you all for your time.
Oh, sorry, we have one more question.
Okay.
All right, I think you're good with your question now.
Go ahead.
It just occurred to me while listening to, forget Clearwater, forget North County, because we don't care about them. I understand that thinking, and then all of a sudden it came to my mind, hey, where's the money coming from that we do get, If the money's coming from North County, that's why their opinion matters, you know what I mean? It's because if we just cut them off, we also cut off their money, because they could just say that. So I think somebody that's in charge has to make sure they don't just say, forget those rich people that are paying all the bills, or we won't have what we have, so I don't know, so I probably disagree with the other comment. Mine is, got to listen to everybody and get the most bang for the buck, I think. Right? You can't just diss people because you can disagree with their concept, just, I'm done with you kind of thing, because then where would we ever get? We'd never build any bridges or bus routes. So.
Those are the people that are constantly saying we don't have the money.
Well, maybe they're fiscally responsible.
Okay. I wanna, we have a comment section coming up for general PSTA comments after this. So I wanna pivot away from this presentation and go on to our next presentation so that those members of staff aren't waiting. And with that, we're gonna go to Bonnie Epstein, and she is gonna be telling us today about PSTA access. Bonnie, my former neighbor, always good to see you.
Yes, you too. I wish you were in person. Always good to see you, Mark. Let's see. Okay, yes. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bonnie Epstein, Director of Mobility Services. I have a try to make it super quick update on PSTA access. I know a couple months ago, I heard that there were some questions, kind of general confusion about the services that are available for PSTA access riders. So I just want to go through those really quickly. So the first one I'll start off with is our PSTA access service. So PSTA as a transit agency is required, federally mandated to provide accessible transportation or complementary to the fixed route. At PSTA, we call that PSTA access. It used to be called the DART service. Riders that become eligible, anyone that lives or travels within Pinellas County can apply for the access service. To apply, you just call PSTA, 540 or 727-540-1888, option 4. We'll walk you through the entire process. So you request a paper application, fill that out, turn it in. There's a 30-minute or so mobility consultation that's done over the phone, and then we mail you a letter letting you know if you're approved for access or not and the length of the eligibility for the access service. So once riders are eligible for the PSTA access service, they can request a trip by calling PSTA, again, our exciting phone tree of 727-540-1888, option 2 to request a PSTA access ride. And as of August 2022, we have the PSTA access app. So you can either call, press option 2, or use the PSTA access app, and you have to just book the trip by 5 p.m. the day before. So the providers that we have for the PSTA access service are First Transit or Transdev. First Transit was recently bought by Transdev. They have a subcontractor, Userve, and we also have Bay Area Metro. The trips, you have to book the trip by 5 p.m. the day before, and there's a 30-minute pickup window for the trip. So if you request 9 o'clock, we have between 9 and 9:30 to pick you up. and the trip may or may not be shared. Riders pay $4.50 per ride on the Access service, and that's payable through a paper ticket that you can request through the mail. It's payable through cash, and you could also pay with a credit or debit card on file. We just rolled that out last month. So as of last month, all Access rides can be paid for with a debit or credit card. And this is one of my favorite TRAC riders here. I don't know if you know her. Or Access riders. Another service that we offer to anyone that's that's eligible for Access. So once you go through, you apply for Access and you're found eligible, any Access rider can opt into our Mobility on Demand program. So the Mobility on Demand program is a little bit different. It provides curb to curb as opposed to Access, which provides door to door service. The Mobility on Demand program is you just call or you get the ride when you're ready to go. It's on demand. It operates countywide, and the hours are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Again, if you want to use the MOD program, you have to be Access eligible first. So to request a trip, same phone number, 727-540-1888, and you press option 1. So you can either request the trip over the phone, or you can, we made this available, I think, last month as well. You can order the ride through the PSTA Access app. So either press option 1, call through the phone, or use the PSTA Access app. When you're ready, just book the ride and choose your provider right there from the app. So the providers that we have for the Mobility on Demand service are Uber, Lyft, local taxi, Bay Area Metro, and then wheelchair transport. So for this service, riders pay $3.50 per trip, and all rides are paid for with a credit or debit card on file. Got one more service I wanted to go over. That's the TD Tampa Bay program. So the TD Tampa Bay program is open to any rider in the Transportation Disadvantaged program, and we also invited all of our Access riders eligibility into the TD Tampa Bay service. So the TD Tampa Bay program provides cross-county rides between Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco counties. So you have to cross a county line to be able to use the service. So going from Pinellas, you'd have to be traveling either into Pasco or to Hillsborough into Pasco. The service operates from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And the providers are the same for the MOD service. So that's Uber, Lyft, United Taxi, and wheelchair transport. One of the differences, though, with how you book the trip in the TD Tampa Bay program is that you hail the ride directly yourself using either the Uber and Lyft app or by calling United Taxi or wheelchair transport directly and asking for the ride. We did introduce, I think last month or 2 months ago, a new provider. They're called GoGo or GoGo Grandparent. So that's for riders that want to use Uber and Lyft, but they don't want to use the app to book the trip. So they can call the GoGo Grandparent phone number and book the trip. As you choose if you want to use Uber and Lyft, and they'll book the ride for you and sort of track it and make sure you get the ride. But how to apply for the program, riders apply directly to their home county. So if you're in Hillsborough County, you apply through Sunshine Line. Once Sunshine Line determines that you're TD eligible, they send and that you want to join the TD Tampa Bay program, they send those riders to us, and we give all the riders a call, just ask them who they want to use as their provider, get everybody signed up. So if you're a Pinellas resident, you just call us. Either option 4, so 727-540-1888, option 4, or option 7 will get you signed up for the TD Tampa Bay program. So the rides are $6 one way, and they're paid by, if you want to use Uber, Lyft, or GoGo Grandparent, that's by credit or debit card. You can use cash with United Taxi or wheelchair transport. But we started this program in August or September of last year, 2022. It's a program that had run previously through a different provider. They had different contractors running the service. That funding was discontinued, so there was no TD Tampa Bay service for a little while. And then we applied for a grant, restarted it last year. It has been really successful, and we applied to the grant again to run the service and continue it. I'm pretty sure we've been recommended to continue the service through next fiscal year. I'm almost positive we have it for next year. So we'll continue the TD Tampa Bay program.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
I missed something, okay, so I want to make sure
yeah.
I get it straight. Are you saying that the rides are going to go from $3.50 to $6? Is this something different?
No. This is a different service.
Okay.
So this is the TD Tampa Bay service if you want to go cross county. So
Okay.
the previous service, MOD, is just within Pinellas County, same as the Access service. It really only serves Pinellas County. If you want to go to appointments or life-sustaining activities in Hillsborough or Pasco, we could, if you're Access eligible or TD eligible, we could sign you up for TD Tampa Bay.
And that's $6 a ride.
Yeah, then it's
Okay.
$6 a ride
Thank
each
you.
way. Yeah, no, we've got a lot of programs, so it's keeping them all straight. But yeah, that is our TD Tampa Bay service. One thing I wanted to go over was back to the Access services that we offer. Just touching on the growth and ridership that we've seen recently. If we look at July of 2021, the majority of the rides were done on traditional paratransit. Pre-COVID, that share of the pie was even greater. Traditional paratransit had a lot higher percentage of the rides. Today, we've seen that the Access or traditional paratransit, that's the one done by the dedicated contractor Transdev, Userv, and Bay Area Metro. The ridership hasn't grown that much. It's actually remained about the same, but the on-demand MOD ridership has grown a lot. Now it's over 60% of the overall rides that we give are now on demand, and it's 2.5 times as much ridership is now accounting for the MOD service. So it's been a huge growth in the on-demand rides that we've seen. So I did want to talk about some proposed changes that we're looking at for both services. So we are looking to reduce the Access booking window from 30 days down to 6 days. So one of the main reasons that we wanted to do that is when we allowed rides to be booked through the app and paid for with a credit card, for both in the app and when riders call in, our credit card processor only allows rides to be booked out 6 days to have a credit card be put on there. So some riders are saying, well, I booked a ride for tomorrow and I can use my credit card to pay for that trip, but I booked a ride 10 days from now and it's not letting me pay for the ride with a credit card. So to kind of make everything more uniform, all rides, whether it's MOD, all Access rides booked in the app or called in to be paid with a credit card, we reduced the booking window to 6 days. We're also hoping to see a reduction in late cancellations and no-shows. We see some days very, very high percentages of no-shows and cancellations on the Access service because rides are booked so far in advance. And we're really an outlier having the booking window be at 30 days. Most agencies are about a week or 2 weeks. A lot are moving to even shorter booking windows. We were just at the ABBG Paratransit Conference. There's agencies going from 1 week to 3 days to really work on late cancellations and no-shows. So we've heard, mostly not a whole lot about this change. We haven't heard just a handful of complaints or concerns about it. But so far, we're okay with that one. Another proposed change that we're making is for the MOD service. So right now on MOD, the cost per trip, like I said, is $3.50 paid for on a credit or debit card for any trip that you want to take on the Mobility on Demand service. Well, what the proposed change is looking at a daily escalating copay for that service. So the first 2 trips a rider takes on the MOD service for the day would remain at $3.50. The 3rd and 4th trip in the day that a rider takes, the copay instead of $3.50 would become $6 per trip. And then if a rider wants to take even more trips that day, the 5th trip and beyond, the copay would be $10 per trip. So doing a little bit of analysis from our recent ridership, it's about between 10 and 15% of riders, individual riders, take more than 3 or more trips a day. So we're not, with this change, going to be impacting too many riders, but they will see a change on that. And they can choose to still take the ride or, take it a different day. But that is what we're proposing as a change for August. But I really want to get everybody's thoughts, comments, questions on everything I presented on in these proposed changes. That is the end of my presentation. Yes.
All right, thank you, Bonnie. And does anybody have any comments about access?
Yes, oh my goodness, yes. I do.
Yeah.
You ready, Mark? Is Mark?
Yes.
There? Okay. Yes. Bonnie and I have been emailing back and forth a lot.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of confusion, and I just learned about the 6 days because I'm on the app, which was taken off my phone, and I had to get in touch with Washington State. And a fella out there gave me the code to get back into Access. And in the meantime, they were showing up at my house with this nice little note that said, if you're not here, we're gonna not pick you up anymore. We're gonna knock you off the program. Whoa! You knocked me off the phone, and then I get the note, the over-polite note, saying, get your act together, we're not gonna show up and have you not be here. Yeah, I would love to have canceled it, but the app was taken off my phone. And I learned about the 6 days, and you just explained it. Now I know. I can't plan ahead, so it's up to me to do a little memo to myself, call them up or get back on app and do it. And I spent an hour and a half waiting for the pickup on Sunday. Turns out the fella had to take his lunch, which is the law. You have to take your lunch. But I was waiting all by myself. One fellow stayed behind in the church parking lot. Actually, I think we were still in the AC, so I was okay. I wasn't out in the heat. But he stayed behind to make sure that I wasn't all by myself. And that happens, and I've noticed on the app, they keep pushing the window. So yeah, they're in the window, but it's like Giacomo. They keep pushing the half-hour window.
Yeah, in real time, as the driver is becoming later and later, it does change. It's updating the time, letting you know it's going to be later
and later.
Yeah.
So then it's past the, like if I schedule for 1:15, they're picking me up at 1:40 or 1:46 or 1:50. That's outside the half-hour window. 1:45 is the half-hour window.
Yeah.
I'll wait till the 1:45, but then they'll pick me up even later, like Sunday.
Yeah. Do you have a standing order booked for Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think then it's just a late driver because the standing order, if you have that, it should always roll out for 1:15. If you're getting picked up after that is a trip that we're late for. And I'll definitely take a look at what happened on this past Sunday.
Please do.
Yeah.
And also, no more credit card, no more debit card.
Yep, we took them off for you. Yeah.
Right, we took them off of me.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else is having a problem. I know that the driver shared with me that another lady scheduled out about 15, 20 rides. She got charged all 15, 20 rides at one time on her credit card. Oh my goodness. And she had to go back and cancel all those. Now, that was before the 6-day rule, which I learned the hard way because I'm trying to make a plan. So I appreciate hearing about it today. But there again, there's another example. Don't have the credit card. Because we have punch cards, because we're volunteers, we have punch cards.
Yeah.
So if we give the driver a punch card and he doesn't see anything about a credit card, halfway through the trip, then he says, oh, now I see you paid for it with the credit card. But you just punched my card. So that's why you very politely gave me refunded.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm getting double charged.
Yeah, this has been a learning curve for both our reservation agents and for drivers.
Yes.
So lots of riders want to pay with a credit card, but they want to pay for some trips with a credit card, and they're going to use cash or punch card for other trips. So we are making sure that we're asking every trip, do you want to use a credit card for this, or do you want to pay on the vehicle with cash or paper ticket? And I'm sorry that had, there have been some riders where either confusion or we just got it wrong, an operator error. We're also trying to make sure on the driver's side, this is something new for them too, because Access has never taken credit card payments before. And to have, it's been a learning curve for the drivers
Everybody,
too.
Yes, and also I know you need to hire more drivers.
Okay.
Most definitely. And the drivers and the riders, we're a team.
Yeah.
We're always talking about what's going on. The driver today was an old UPS coworker, which is kind of cool. But he was saying, we gotta hire more drivers, because he was scheduled to go home. But he stayed around to make sure I got home, which was cool.
Yeah, I know in the past couple days, I think with kids just getting out of school, we have seen some more vacation time. Some drivers are trying to take it before July 1st. So there's, I think, a few more vacations and things that we had usually budgeted for, but.
And I don't trust the app because it still doesn't have my home address.
Okay, yeah, I can help you put it in there.
Correct it every time.
Yeah, we can. If you have time, I can help you put the
Make sure
address
it's-
in there.
Yeah, sometimes it gets it, sometimes it doesn't. And the other thing is, the favorite list.
Mm-hmm.
There are, like, the Saturday market is closed for the summer.
Yeah.
That's on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need it anymore. Leave it there. Well, I'll need it again in the fall.
Yeah.
But how do I get other favorites on there? Like the Long Center. How do I
Yeah.
get favorites back on there? And my horseback riding lessons, I could take the bus, but that would be not convenient.
Yeah.
Definitely take the van on Belcher to get to the horseback riding. That's ending. That's another thing. I would like to have it in my favorites.
Yeah.
'Cause I'll need it again in the fall.
Yeah, so I can either show you after the meeting
Okay,
how to
how to
add
do
it,
favorites.
or I can just add it to your favorites. So, or if you want somebody else to walk you through it, we can have somebody give you a call. Lots of options.
Yeah. I think I got it all.
I want to pay you a
Awesome.
compliment.
Yeah.
I've enrolled many, many senior people that live in mobile home parks on the MOD program.
Yeah.
They love it. It's working great. They don't have any complaints about waiting time for somebody to pick up a phone. Usually when a rep gets on the phone, they hang in there with them till they make a connection.
Mm-hmm.
Uber service, which was non-existent, although because of the
Yeah.
pandemic, is now really on a ball. Sometimes 5 minutes and you get a ride.
Yeah.
So it's working really great. Thanks to you, Bonnie.
Oh, thanks. It's good. We
Okay,
always-
do we have anything else related to the TD Transit Disadvantage Program?
I have a couple of questions, but I'm not gonna keep everybody at this point, but, I would love to have more clarity on kind of what constitutes eligibility for being on, because I talk to people in my building who, many of them shouldn't be driving any longer, and I try to convince them to sign up, and I give them sort of the key words to use to try to get approved for that.
Uh-huh.
And also, are the criteria for access, different than like TD Tampa Bay? Because my understanding is TD Tampa Bay is somehow supposed to be even a little tighter. It's like for work only or medical, but not for like going to visit a friend. Whereas I say that Access, you can do almost anything.
Yeah, so the Access program, riders need to go through the eligibility process, basically showing that they're, due to a disability, they're not able to get to the bus, have trouble waiting for the bus, navigating the bus system, riding the bus. So we go through that with the paper application and through the mobility consultation. So if, for whatever reason can't ride the fixed route bus, go through the eligibility process, they can become eligible for Access. And Access, once you're eligible for Access and for MOD, the service is just available. It's not, you can only use it for certain purposes. You can use it for any trip. The TD service is supposed to be only eligible for life-sustaining trips. We try to be as flexible as possible there with life-sustaining, but, wanting to go to the bar or fun bar in Tampa is sort of hard to say, like, that's a life-sustaining trip.
But meeting a friend, going to a friend's house for lunch kind of thing, is that?
Yeah, it depends on how you say it. If you're, helping that friend with anything, or if that friend is helping you with something, if you're gonna maybe go grocery shopping together and you might stop at the pharmacy.
Yeah.
If you
can stretch it.
If you say things that way, then we can count it as a life-sustaining trip. But, some people are just like, hey, I want to go to the bar, and, that's a little more difficult.
By the way, in terms of confusion on I keep looking at my phone. It said my 5:01 ride was supposed to be here at 5:02, but I've never gotten an announcement that there is a driver here. So I'm hoping that my driver didn't come.
No, it's running. I've been watching it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's he's running a few minutes late, so it should be a few minutes after 5:30.
Oh, good, thank you.
Yeah,
because I'm trying to see it.
I know I was gonna rematch the trip, but I was like, well, we're running a little behind schedule, so maybe I'll leave it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Can I tell a funny story really quick?
It's up to Mark.
I'm sorry?
Mark, I have a story really quick. That Tampa Bay disadvantage, $6 to come home from the airport.
Mm-hmm.
The plane we were in was too small for my chair. They put my chair on a different flight.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
guess what? It was later than 7 o'clock.
Oh.
Yeah, so we got it in the chair, which was good. Finally, we got it, but it was after 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
Luckily, I have a friend who has a broken back.
Wow.
So-
We understand.
Called a friend
Yeah.
who's got the handicapped access van.
Mhm.
Called her, got home, no problem. But because my chair
Mhm.
did a direct flight to Tampa
Yeah.
and it arrived too late,
Yeah.
I called my friend, I got home anyway. But it kind of backfired on me, that $6 ride, because they had to put my chair on a different flight. But we're all
Yeah.
home, and it was a great vacation.
Yeah, in our most recent application for the TD Tampa Bay program, we wanted to expand hours, so that, because right now, one of the reasons that we had the program ending at 7 is just in case there's a problem, riders could contact us either through customer service, or they know if they're an Access rider, they're used to calling us. But if we are gonna try to make that go a little later, especially with the Go-Go grandparent service. It used to be called Go-Go grandparent, now it's just Go-Go. Since that will be a number that people can call if something goes wrong.
Like that, right.
Yeah,
My chair is on a different plane.
yeah, so, yeah, sorry to hear that, but glad you got home okay.
Yeah, my friend came. Please, please, please. Yeah, we'll be there. Don't worry about it. So, yeah.
How many people do you have working in the MOD picking up phones?
We have, for reservations, we have 10 full-time, 2 part-time staff, but on any given day, we probably have 6 reservation agents, but we also utilize the customer service reps to help. They probably have between 4 and 8 people every day answering the phone.
Did you extend the time from 7 to 8 o'clock?
We stay open until 7:30, and customer service stays open till 8, just in case, 'cause if
Okay,
you
so
book
if somebody
yeah.
calls between 7 and 8, they can still get somebody.
Yeah, the MOD line will close at 7:30, but if you call customer service, they'll answer till 8. Most of the time, and we usually check the last person on the reservation team that leaves at 7:30, they check to make sure there's a driver on the way, at least for any of the trips that were booked right before 7. But there's always that chance where the driver gets there and they can't find the customer and then there's a no-show. So yeah, if you call customer service, they're there till 8.
Okay, thank you.
Another real quick one. If it's $450 for access and $350 for MOD, does PSTA prefer that people use one or the other? I mean, what's the difference because that may be part of why more people, I know people say, oh, I'd rather do MOD, it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Is there, why is there a difference in price, and what do you all prefer that people do?
Well, first, it is the customer's choice. So we want to make sure that the customer is choosing the right type of ride for them. I know I touched on it very briefly that the access service does provide a door-to-door service where MOD is technically curb to curb. A lot of the drivers will help you to the door if you need it, but we can't sort of compel them in the same way that we can the access riders. So I never want to put a customer in a situation where, yeah, definitely use MOD, they get help most of the time, but then they get a driver who isn't willing to walk them to the door, and then they're, needing to call out to strangers in the parking lot for help or something.
Yeah.
So it really should be based off of what the rider is most comfortable with, because once you're eligible for access, you can choose. You can choose, do I want to ride on access or do I want to go on MOD? That's up to the customer. I think MOD offers more mobility freedom. The cost per trip to PSTA is usually lower on MOD, but it really just depends on, the time of day, the length of the trip, lots of factors.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, any more comments for TD and Direct Connect? Or,
Access.
access, excuse me. All right, with that, we'll move into our last piece, which is comments
Oh.
and anything for the good of the order. So we'll start with Jay.
Hi, so I would love if we would be able to get a breakdown of the locational source of our property tax funding. As most of us know, the majority of our funding, seems like 60%, comes from our property taxes. That just, I don't know if anyone from PSA is still in the room who can enable that or whatever. But not just the total amount, but like the general, this amount comes from St. Pete, this amount comes from so you know what I mean? So it could, instead of folks having assumptions of where our tax money is coming from, we will actually have the actual information.
Yeah, so.
And, yeah.
We haven't done that recently. We've kind of not loved doing that always in the past. Sometimes what ends up happening is, you have to look at both service. So let's say City of St. Pete residents pay in more than another city, but there's a lot more service. So like North County pays in something, but there's less service. And I think the only thing that you could get, we could do somewhat of a look at it, but you start getting into cities being like, well, I need to get more service because proportionally I pay this percent, and we have a lot of cities in our county, and it becomes a difficult, conversation sometimes. Sure. Because no route just
I understand that.
Because no route travels just in the city, right? They travel between cities and around cities, so you'd have to figure all that out. It's just a very complicated exercise.
I have a question for Heather.
I understand.
I'm sorry.
It's just that, so I was just looking at the population number, more than half of the county lives in what's quote unquote called South County. So it's just, earlier in this call, there was almost a discussion around, like, South County, St. Pete shouldn't care about what's going on, what the North County Clearwater folks say, and then Clearwater folks say, well, we're sending more money, so we should definitely care, but we don't actually know that information. That is all assumptions based off of stereotypes and what people believe different neighborhoods are valued. And I would just rather have conversations based on fact, and also realize that we are in the same county. So regardless, PSA, all the county and all but two of our municipalities are all members of PSTA. So it doesn't really matter, it shouldn't matter to, where people are residing as to, who gets to say.
Right.
And I just want us to remember that we are in this county together. Let's not get super divisive over that.
So if I could maybe make a follow-up comment to that. No, I think you may bring up a great point. So I think at the end of the day, when it comes to this community bus plan, it will certainly be a countywide transit planning exercise. That being said, though, I think it could be recognized that, there are certain areas that, maybe have, a little more need than others. So there'll be an effort that's related and concurrent to this. The board will be voting on this month. That'll be the South St. Pete CRA mobility study. And so that's going to be looking at transportation solely within the South St. Pete CRA, not only transit, but also sidewalk connectivity, with street conditions, micromobility options such as scooter share and bike share. And so I think through efforts like that, and then it's certainly going to be coordinated with the bus plan, I think, it can balance making sure we're looking at the countywide system and how it connects, but also making sure that we're looking at areas such as the South Bay CRA that we know, people in that community are more likely to use, transit and other mobility service than other communities.
Yeah, and then I just thought of one other thing. I was probably getting a little too plannery in my explanation, but we can also, I can look at the county website. I'm sure they have something on there that shows by city just the total amounts, they collect, the property tax office collects.
Yeah, and we could certainly share our financial reports of, we don't necessarily have the breakdown by city, but we can show you, what our property tax is as a percentage of our total operating budget, and then show you some of the other funding sources we get. And also, we have reports on the capital side as well.
Yeah, and also it doesn't have to be super granular by city. Like clearly, St. Petersburg going to have spend more money. A quarter of the county lives here. It's just that it could be South Mid, South County, Central County, North County. It doesn't have to be super granular. Or I just want folks to move forward with actual information and not presumptions. That's what I'm saying.
All right, thank you, Jay, and thank you to those who also piggybacked on his comments. Does anybody else have any comments that they have for the good of the order or for staff, anything of that nature?
I have a question for Heather.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Heather,
Yes.
there's a rumor floating around that they're going to curtail service on many routes, including the cat trolley. So briefly, can you
Yes.
fill us in?
Tomorrow, we have to do some level of cuts. We've done some cuts at the administrative level, like in our departments. Every department had to keep their budget at or below what it was this year. And then we saw the need for about $1.5 million in cuts. So we are trying to recommend what we think will be the least painful. There was an original conversation about eliminating the entire CAT. Now we're talking about keeping the CAT, but only between the Pier and Grand Central, reducing a couple trips on the 52LX, ending all service after 10 p.m., and except for the Sunrunner, and changing the Route 59 on Walmerton Road from 15 to 20 minutes frequency.
59 goes from 15 to 20, and the cat would terminate at Grand Central.
Yes. And then
Okay,
10
will you
p.m.
still have nighttime service on the cat?
No.
What time will it be? The sunset?
Oh, we definitely have that as a conversation with. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hop onto y'all.
No, yeah, not after 10 p.m. But because there's the Sunrunner that'll run.
Sunset, what, 6 o'clock?
The what?
Did you say sunset? What are we talking about?
No, sorry. 10 p.m. The CAT would end at 10 p.m.
Well, the cat will end at 10
And
p.m.
then the Sunrunner will continue till midnight.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, and if
Um,
you would like to have comments to give to.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to just interrupt. Go ahead. I'll raise my hand.
Okay, so we'll go to the room, and then we'll go to Jay.
Mark, this is a
Was there
question.
somebody in the room that had a comment?
Yeah, Mark, it's just a question for you. I don't really care, I just want to make sure we did things right. You know how they said we had to be here in order to pass the motions?
Yeah.
In person?
Yeah.
Does that include anybody who, what do you call it, so moved? Do they have to be here? Because we started with people, I don't care who did, I was just saying, I want to make sure we covered our bases.
Oh,
Does it
yes,
have
so
to?
before you came into the room, so the group who were just in the room here voted to allow people attending
Oh,
virtually to be
nice.
able to vote.
Sorry, I
And then,
missed
so
it.
right when you walked in was when we were voting on the action
That's a
item.
great idea, yeah, thank you, yeah, because virtual.
Oh, you know,
It's
it's
similar
like-
to the way they do it at a board, the big board meeting.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Jay?
Yes, can we have a report at our next track meeting about these proposed changes? Because I don't know, like, I love the sermon and all, I use it quite often, however, if we're talking on Central Avenue, it stops every, mile or so, so like, you're expecting people, like, what's the, not Gate, what's the name, that doggone bus station?
The Grand Central.
Grand Central, to walk a half a mile or more to get to places. I don't know, that's just, I don't know. I just would like to report on that because that seems a lot. We already cut the 18 because of the summer, which makes sense. But now to cut the cat from downtown, and yeah. And any service after 10? I'm sorry. That seems to me. Oh, cat, I'm sorry. I got distracted. My apologies.
No, it's okay.
He's sitting here with my coworker.
Can I just chime in real quick, Mark? So,
Yeah, go right ahead.
so I think we'll be doing a public hearing on this, and you can certainly submit your comments on the recommendations. Like I said, we're presenting the budget to the board, the planning committee and the board this month with just recommendations. We wouldn't take action, I believe, until July. So certainly your comments are valid, and we're happy to take them.
When will this occur?
October.
Next shift or what?
October.
October, right? Okay. It's not bad.
Glad you asked.
Okay, are we all set with comments and, go to the order? Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you for our July meeting, which, if I'm taking a guess, is gonna be on July 18th.
Excellent.
We'll see you then. Everybody have a great Pride. Bye.
Bye.
Mark.
Good night.
Everybody, please make sure you sign your name on the attendance. Here.
Make $1 million,
Thank you so much.
cancel one electric bus and buy some used buses.
Thank you so much.
The issue is that that's capital funding, and capital
Okay,
funding is
I'm
only
around.
50 minutes,
Honestly,
so,
I don't
yeah,
want
so
to
you
know.
should pay for this with grants.
Yeah, and a lot